Welcome into Boxing Scene Today here at the ProBox TV studios. Well, it looks like Teofimo Lopez, despite having the best fight in the Times Square card last month, is on the outs with Turki Al-Sheikh, tweeting that he was fired. Where does that leave him in a potential showdown with Devin Haney, Jimmy Smith alongside the champs, Chris Algieri, Paulie Malignaggi? So Teofimo Lopez, I'm reading the headline, gets fired by Turki Al-Sheikh after social media rant with Devin Haney fight in jeopardy. Went after Turki Al-Sheikh a little bit, calling him a dictator on his social media. Then Turki Al-Sheikh didn't mention Teofimo Lopez by name, just said, there are things that I don't want to talk about in public. Then him saying, I was fired by Turki Al-Sheikh. That's what Teofimo Lopez said. Look, Devin Haney, of course, very much in the camp of Turki Al-Sheikh. That was the no-brainer fight to make after, once again, the Times Square card where Haney looked good. I mean, got back on the winning track. I don't know if he looked great, but, of course, I thought Teofimo Lopez had the performance of the night there. Chris, is this one of those maddening things of Teofimo Lopez just shooting himself in the foot at the exact wrong time?
Yeah, it's one of those things where you look at Teofimo's career, and honestly, this career should be studied because it's very unique. I mean, he's super talented. He's got highs, he's got lows, and he's beat great fighters when they were actually great. He's got a bunch of world titles at a very, very young age, undisputed, and he's probably the lowest paid of all of these guys that we're talking about. When we're talking about Devin Haney, Gervonta Davis, all these guys, that he's on their level in terms of his talent and his ability.
He's better.
And he's better. Yeah. And he's better, yeah. And he hasn't made anywhere near the amount of money that Devin Haney has, Gervonta Davis has.
His resume combined is better than both of theirs. Absolutely. I mean, his resume is better than both of theirs combined.
Teofimo is a phenomenal resume at the age that he's at. And you look, I mean, I used to kind of look at it like, man, this poor kid. But after a while, you're like, this is a recurring thing. This keeps happening. How much of it is it? When does it turn from being
I don't know how to get out of your own way
to your fault? Because he had problems with Top Rank. And listen, Top Rank, they're a great company. They're a smart company. I understand they're not the highest paying company, and you got to really get to a certain level to get there. I mean, I'd argue Teofimo did get to that level, but he never got the money that he was looking for. Now you got Turki Al-Sheikh, who is obviously paying these guys the levels that Teofimo probably deserves, and then he still can't cross the finish line.
But why? What was the issue though? Because they wouldn't make the Giron Ennis fight. I mean, is it bad that you get frustrated for not getting the Giron Ennis fight?
Well, he said that it was Giron Ennis who turned him down. He necessarily blamed Turki Al-Sheikh. I don't know what happened, but publicly that's what he's saying is, hey, Giron, you don't want to fight me? Are you really from Philadelphia?
Again, he's looking for the toughest fights, and he's not talking about it. He's always about it.
But is the issue that he was too public with things that were talked about behind closed doors, and that's why Turki is now not on the side?
Well, how old is Teofimo?
What's he,
27?
Mid-20s to 27, 28.
Okay.
In the prime.
And Jimmy, what was the fight you said they were looking? Was
Devin Haney is what they were looking at.
Okay.
On the Turki Al-Sheikh side.
I mean, I'm going to be really clear. I've been very clear about guys' choices of opposition.
27 years old, by the way.
All this stuff. Okay, I'm going to be very clear. Teofimo Lopez is 27, not 37. Devin Haney was going to go nowhere near Teofimo Lopez, all right? If he was 37, he'd fight him. If he was 37, they wouldn't even be an issue. Turki would make the fight because he does the favors for Devin and he makes the fight. Teofimo Lopez is 27 and beating the shit out of good fighters. There's no shot in hell Devin Haney was going to fight Teofimo Lopez. Let's not even discuss that because you got to be 35 plus. And half shot, at least, for Devin to fight you. So he can build up, and you have to have had a great resume prior to 35 plus. Because if you didn't have a great resume prior to 35 plus, then you know what I mean on your name was a mean on. But Devin fan base is actually that stupid that if you can get to 35 plus and you have a great resume prior to it, and then 35 plus and be half shot, now you can catapult yourself off of, beat this ex-world champion who's the Hall of Famer, this and that.
But the argument
the argument is that because Devin's own father tweeted that not even Floyd Mayweather did what Devin did. Like, we're going to compare those resumes?
That was wild.
But this is exactly the game they're playing. If you look between the lines, you read that tweet itself, you can read between the lines with the way they played. There's no shot he was ever going to fight Teofimo Lopez.
What they're going to say now is that Teofimo imploded it. That's what Team Haney's going to say.
Yeah.
Good excuse.
That's fine.
That's going to be the narrative.
Right.
It's always imploded. I get it. And you can go that route. But your body of work still has to be looked at. 35 plus, half shot with a great resume.
This is the
and the most important part, a fan base dumb enough to buy into, wow, what a resume. Because he beat this many champions. He beat this.
How strong is Devin's fan base at this point? He got raked over the coals with the Ryan thing, which was surprising to me because he was.
And that's where I did defend him. You know,
of course.
You know what I mean? So
is the fan base really there? You know, for Devin Haney,
disappointing fight.
But look at the Ryan.
He's not making any new fans.
Ryan looked like he was falling off the edge, right? So that risk of taking on a guy in his 20s. It was calculated enough to where they were like, all right, we can get this guy because this guy.
Yeah, but when they booked the fight, he wasn't. It didn't seem like he was.
When they booked the fight, he had no resume though. There was also
had just lost to Tank.
Yeah, had just lost to Tank. It looked bad. I mean, granted, the rehydration clause could have been a factor.
I don't know, man.
But there was no resume. Ryan has no resume.
Ryan was always a dangerous guy, though. Everyone knew he could punch. Listen, Tank did interviews after the fight and goes, "So I was worried. I was watching him knock people out."
Ryan's best win. Yes, he wasn't that worried because he didn't prepare at all defensively. He fought a defensively very irresponsible fight. Devin did. You know, I've seen Devin box way better.
No, he's talking about Gervonta.
Tank did interviews where he was like, I was worried about, and he fought a very good, smart fight.
Listen, Gervonta fighting a lot of half-ass no-hopers. You gotta play up your opponents as best as possible when there's constant criticism. Yeah,
he took the fight seriously. He boxed smart that night. It wasn't like he just went out there and beat the guy out.
Ryan can punch. Ryan's best win is
Campbell.
Probably Campbell, and also the guy who's been on a streak since then. What's his name?
Duarte. Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, Duarte's a really good win.
Right,
that Campbell fight was special though. He gets dropped the way he does, comes back and beats him up.
But that's I don't think that guy exists anymore. They get up off the ground and roar back like that. But Devin was very irresponsible in the Ryan fight. That's the one fight where I would have gave him some credit. And I still defend them because I don't think it's right when somebody pops regardless of how much they pop for or what they pop for. But he fought a very irresponsible fight. And that was your chance to show me, like, okay, you can box on that level against guys in their prime. You know, show me how you box on that level. He's coming forward, squared up.
I think a lot of that was just ego, though. I think it was just a
lot of that was they thought he sucked. That's what I'm saying. That's the reason they took the fight. They were like, all right, this is a guy in his 20s, but he actually sucks, so we're going to take this risk. And who knows? If Ryan wasn't doped up, maybe Devin still wins the fight because we saw the Ryan against Rolly, and it wasn't that impressive.
What I'm curious about when I look at Teofimo Lopez, yes, he's fought some great guys. He's tried to fight the great guys, but the what ifs of God, can he get a run going? Let's say he's got 3 or 4 years. Remember, he's about 140 pounder. They don't age spectacularly. The rule of thumb, by the way, at home, the lighter you are, the younger you have to fight. It's just heavyweights can fight in their 40s. 140 pounders cannot, right? So this idea that Chris, from the outside, as an expert and as a fan, he has 3-4 years left to really get those meaty, juicy fights.
I'd say 5.
Yeah, let's say 5.
32 is usually where.
Sure, let's say 32, 33. This kind of stuff makes me go, God, are we restarting again? Like, can we start that run from the outside as a fan because you see glimpses of Hall of Fame, world-class potential, but you've got to get that run.
Yeah, and it's amazing that he's done so much that he's done with all the stops that he's had, and he's still only 27. And and it's just
the bar is also low for the Hall of Fame. Like, let's be honest.
Well,
Teofimo's got a better resume now than some guys who are in the Hall of Fame already.
We do. Yeah,
that's a really good point. He said he belongs in the Hall of Fame already. I tend to agree, but we're just saying in terms of how good he actually is. Like he's
where he could go.
Yeah. Like he's truly special in terms of his physical gifts and his talent. But yeah, I mean, he just can't get any momentum going.
Yeah.
I mean, he had that big stretch before the Kambosos fight because of the purse bids, and Triller wins it out. Yep. Triller was a mess. That fell apart, pushed everything back. Then Matchroom had to pick it up because they couldn't match the purse bid they put in. That was a whole crazy story. So that pushed back that fight forever. Obviously, we know how that fight went. And then, the recovery from there, because then I think he had another year layoff. And then he came back with a couple really good wins. He gets the Taylor fight, looks absolutely spectacular. And then he kind of disappears again. And then he comes back, way too long. If we can get him on a run for the next couple of years, I mean, I don't think there's any cap to how far
he just did to Barboza when nobody else did to Barboza.
Yeah, well, Barboza is the king of making guys look bad.
Barboza is a guy who's, young, primed, right? He's about 30 years old, Barboza, right?
He was primed for a war. He was a world championship.
Again, that's what I'm saying. That's the kind of risks that only certain fighters take. And they're not trying to manipulate the system like that. That's a risk fight because it's not even that high of a credit giver if you beat a guy like that.
But undefeated 33.
Yeah. Nobody's given Teofimo that much credit for that win. That's a solid win. That's a better win than some of your favorite fighters. Most
Into
of their
that
wins.
fight, I was talking to Carl Moretti. He goes, "Am I crazy to think that Barboza can win this?" I go, "Oh no, absolutely he can win this. If Teofimo doesn't show up, he loses."
And that's what I'm saying. And then Teofimo wins it rather easily. You know, so and Barboza didn't fight a bad fight. It was he was
outdone,
out talented, out skilled, out boxed. You know, I would have personally like to see Giron and Teofimo. You know, maybe these are things behind the scenes, right? These are discussions that Teofimo was getting in trouble for exposing. Why? What do you have in mind for Giron Ennis if you're not going to put him with a smaller phenom? Because that's a name fighter that can build Giron's position. You know, like you're going to have the advantage. You're bigger. You're unbelievably skilled yourself and powerful. What's with not making that fight, dude? Like, because it's not like Giron has had all these big name fights and it's like, we don't really need that one. No, you actually need that one.
Yeah.
So, and we already heard he was gonna fight at 154 against Virgil Ortiz a while back, and then all of a sudden they pulled out that we're not ready for that. Now I'm hearing it twice. Now you're starting to set a pattern, bro. Now it's like, are you really having that much trouble? No. Are you really having that much trouble acquiring these big fights? Or deep down, do you not have the confidence to actually fight them? Because now, at a certain point, listen, we've all had our teams, dude. I'll get in my team's face and be like, we're making these fights. Okay, we're making this fight. So at the end of the day, which is it? Because now, once, okay, it can be coincidental. Twice, now you're going to make me think. Well, the whole conversation is on Teofimo. My mind goes off to Giron now. Why is Giron not being allowed to fight Teofimo? And why is Giron himself not speaking up and saying, I want that fight. That's the fight to make. That's a fight to make. And honestly, you give Giron the advantage.
Yeah,
if Teofimo can upset him, which Teofimo, it has the ability to upset anybody, you still you want a super fight where you have the advantage. That's unbelievable. For Giron, that's unbelievable.
And also,
but there's no super fights that are easy either.
It would be the highest level name on his record by far. An undisputed guy, even though he's 2 weight classes lower.
So while we're talking about Teofimo shoot himself in the foot, this and that, why don't we pay attention to what Teofimo said? And that, when I paid attention to what Teofimo said, I said, again, Giron being avoided in a big fight?
Paul, are you telling me that Teofimo Lopez is the biggest boogeyman in boxing?
He's a boogeyman. He is a boogeyman. I mean,
I like where you're going with this.
Listen, he can't get out of his own way. I'll say that he does burn bridges. He goes scorched earth wherever he goes. It is a problem.
Listen,
but if you want to avoid him, you can, because he'll stick his foot in his mouth. He makes it easy to avoid it.
But then don't tell me that these guys are being avoided. Don't tell me, because if then they don't want these fights.
Fair enough.
Don't cry and say, I can't get these fights. No, then stop. I don't want to hear it. Stop.
How dangerous is Teofimo that he can literally call people racial slurs and he still can't get the guys to fight him?
Yeah.
Listen, you call me racial. All right, I get to punch you in the face.
I'll fight you right.
I'll fight you right now. I'm doing it for my race.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. And these guys, guys still won't fight him.
Yeah.
But here's,
I think Keyshawn Davis will fight him though.
Well, right.
Yes, Keyshawn will fight him.
Probably.
Yes.
This is what I'm curious about. When you talk about the boogeyman, you know what the boogeyman is? The greatest boogeyman of all time. Let's give a little history lesson here, and I think all three of us might agree on this. One interesting discussion. Aaron Pryor, to me, was the biggest boogeyman of all time because he was the king of 140 pounds, much like Teofimo, a weight class without a whole lot of talent. Arguello went up to fight him, but he couldn't get the Sugar Ray Leonards, the Roberto Duran, because, man, this dude's dangerous. But does anybody know him outside of Cincinnati, Ohio? That was the problem. Teofimo has a name where most fans know him. Boogeymen are the guy you go, oh, that guy that you don't know 100%? That dude. You and I can name a dozen, right? Of guys like,
Barboza was kind of a boogeyman,
right? This guy's under the radar, but dude, this guy can fight.
Yeah.
This idea, Nicholas Flaws, don't touch that dude.
Well, Robert was talking about Camus yesterday, about the opponent of he's like, this guy's probably the most dangerous guy in the division.
And dude, how smart is Robert, by the way? He goes, no, this dude's no jump.
Opponent.
Dude, he goes, no, this is no scrub, dude.
Right.
I love the way Robert, but Robert knows that's a boogeyman. Who the hell is this guy? No, look at this. Teofimo, when I say Teofimo Lopez, you know who I'm talking about. So he's automatically not the boogeyman because he's well known. There's a reward to fighting.
You know what's crazy? When you beat boogeyman, you don't get a lot of credit because they were just boogeyman nobody knows. Like I always like to mention the
Barboza.
Barboza. But I always like to mention the guy Hagler knocked out, the guy from Argentina who had like all knockout wins.
Yeah. Yep.
I forget his name. That's what
I looked it up last time too. Let me get it.
And he was giving Hagler trouble for a round or two.
Fits, dude.
Then Hagler thumbed him and just punched the shit out of him and knocked him out. It's like, when they go to the gutter, I'll go to the gutter. And that was it. Just like that, the fight was over.
I'm from Brockton, Mass. You want to go?
But this guy, like, came in with almost all knockouts, rugged Argentine, and was giving him fits for a couple of rounds. Like, and then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, you want to go that deep in the gutter? Let's go.
I heard nobody wanted Sergio Martinez
but nobody,
back in the day.
but
nobody wanted Sergio because he was unknown.
But going back, sorry, Jim.
No, please.
Going back to Hagler. That's a win nobody talks about with Hagler.
Yeah.
Like, you see what I'm saying about boogeymen? Like, everybody talks about Hagler with Hearns and then the Rand fight and Leonard and great wins. But nobody talks about that win. That's a nice win, bro. That's a really nice win. But because it's against the boogeyman, nobody gives it credit. That's a rugged win.
Yeah, Teofimo's not that kind of boogeyman. He's the kind of boogeyman that
Juan Roldan.
Juan Roldan,
yeah.
He died during COVID, I think.
Yeah, we discussed it. Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, Jimmy, it's like, well, yeah, no, Teofimo's a known entity, and
He'll make money
to the
fighting
record,
him.
like Giron, like he's a 2-division world champion.
Yeah, and
Undisputed
Giron is really
135.
starved for name recognition, especially that he came around after the welterweight glitz and glamour moved up, and then he's been so good, and the welterweight division hasn't. So it's like, oh, he's poor guy, he's stuck. But now it's like once, now twice.
But you know,
okay.
I'm gonna push back because I'm gonna defend Ennis and their team. Do they look at this as, we have a very limited time at 147, and we want to be undisputed. We don't have time to take super fights with Teofimo Lopez. I got to got those titles. I got to go get Brian Norman. I got to go get Mario Barrios, or the winner of Barrios and Pacquiao. Are they waiting around for Pacquiao? Are they waiting around for Ryan Garcia?
If you're waiting on for Ryan Garcia, then you can fight Teofimo Lopez. It's not a title fight.
Yeah.
But the money.
Also, Norman, you already know, is a tough negotiation. He's young and he's going to take his time. And you're not going to buy Norman.
The money for Ryan Garcia and Teofimo Lopez are astronomically apart. So you can't compare those apples and oranges. If he's
if it's just about money, then you can say it. Say, hey, you know, but the money. But don't complain about you can't acquire the biggest fights, the biggest names, so on and so forth.
Things go under.
You know what makes it, and what makes all fights bigger? Beating a guy like Teofimo Lopez makes all your fights after that much bigger.
Especially
getting wins like that.
Can you imagine a Giron Ennis who has had some step back fights, but has generally looked really good? If he caught Teofimo Lopez on one of his off nights, which he has had in the ring, oh my God.
But
is there a worse guy to have?
But the reason the fight doesn't get made is because Teofimo doesn't have off nights against guys like that.
No, the more
against
dangerous
guys like
the guys
that,
are, the
more
better.
dangerous, the
Teofimo
sharper
Lopez
he is.
has on nights, and then you got to beat that Teofimo Lopez. And that's the enigma of Teofimo Lopez. Why good fighters hesitate to fight him.
And I also have some insight because I've worked many Teofimo Lopez fights. I've called many of them. He's one of my favorite fighters to call, actually, just because.
Always fun.
Not only just because of his technique and everything we've been talking about. Fight week is insane. He is so up and down. He's all over the place. The fighter meetings are wild. You never know what he's going to say. You never know what he's going to be doing. He's everywhere. And the more I've seen him be like seemingly manic during fight week, the better he's fought. When he fought Lomachenko, I was like, I don't think this guy's going to even make it to the fight. Like, he looked out of sorts. He was very uncomfortable in the fighter meetings. All week, he looked very out of sorts.
What Kambosos, though? Was his father?
Kambosos was different. He was kind of all over the place for that one, too. I didn't work that show, so I wasn't there all fight week, but he wasn't the same. He wasn't worried about Kambosos. It was different. When Lomachenko, he looked like he was like, when you got a possum, with his back against the wall and fights really hard. That's kind of how Teo is. And he's just one of those guys that he needs to feel worried. He needs to feel threatened in order to really show up. Giron Ennis is going to be very threatening. They know he'll show up.
So now we're not going to get this fight. We just tease each other for a half hour.
Hey, it's not a tease. It could certainly happen. The question is, where does Teofimo Lopez go now that apparently on the outs with Turki Al-Sheikh? As it makes boxing news, we'll discuss it right here on a Boxing Scene Today. For the champs, Jimmy Smith, thank you so much for joining us. Tune in. Find out why millions are watching.
Just a tip is a tease.